So we're going to look at two different sections in this. We're going to set up the I am statement that he's going to do by understanding John 14, 1 through 4 a little bit. So we're going to start there. If you'd like to, John 14, verses 1 through 4. This is Jesus talking in the upper room to his disciples. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you with me, that you will be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. So I'm going to do a little bit of biblical text dissection and set ourselves into a little bit of a cultural understanding of what's going on here. And then that'll help make this thing make sense so that the next bit makes sense. Are you ready for a journey? Good. As you look at the biblical text, you're dealing with a very specific kind of culture. It's not ours. Shocker. Unless anyone in here from the ancient Near East, Palestine, Israel, Canaan area. Good. No one's up. It's not ours. It's different. Our culture would be described as bureaucratic. Say bureaucratic. But now, say it again. There it is. That's what we are. We're very state-based. A little bit of a story here. If you were going racing down Highway 30, let's make it, you're going on I-69, you're traveling southbound, and you're going 90 miles an hour, because who doesn't do that on I-69? And you see flashing blue lights behind your car, whoop, whoop. You would know that it's Merritt who has pulled you over, and he has a badge, and he is a representative of the state, of the city of Fort Wayne, of the state, the government, right? He's a representative of that. They're going to confront you for breaking the law of the state. You are not allowed to drive 90 miles an hour on I-69, even though everybody does, Merritt. Right? You can't do that. He would stand at your window, and Merritt would, it's late at night, he's got his flashlight up on his shoulder, and he clicks it in there, and he would say, you would ask for what? Your license and registration, a state-issued ID, and as some sort of identification mark that identifies you as a member of the state in some way. And then if he wasn't in a good mood, he would hand you a piece of paper that would tell you how much money you had to pay the state for the penalty that was due. Bureaucratic. You with me? If you were to lose your job on Monday morning, the first thing you might do in our culture is you would go and file for unemployment, and maybe end up at the welfare office looking for assistance, which of course comes from the state. Does this make sense? In Israel's culture, it's not bureaucratic, it is tribal. Say tribal. Tribal. It's not the state that is the axis of community, but it's the family. Instead of economic opportunity and protection and care for the marginal coming from the state, it comes from the family. Now, our families are important to us. We're having a birthday party for John today, eating pizza. I don't know how many pizzas you're supposed to have for 6 adults and 6 children, but we ordered, I think she got 10 pizzas. I'm not sure. But this is they're important for us. Families can provide economic opportunity, but here it's a family that protects you legally. We're going to learn a word today. It's a kinsman. Say kinsman. It's a kinsman who cares for other kin. It's members of this family unit that care for the other families of the family unit. This is the kinsman. It's the kinsman that takes care of discipline. It's the kinsman that takes care of economic opportunity. It's the kinsman that enforces laws. And so if you were racing down on the national highway outside of Jerusalem on your camel doing 90 miles an hour, which first of all, congratulations, they would call your dad. And your dad would be the one that would give you the snot that is deserved. Safety net. In ancient Israel, it's the tribal community that's the safety net. So if the family is in, there's the drought or whatever it is, there's no food stamps, there's none of those things. If there's a widow or an orphan or someone who falls outside of the family that finds themselves in need, it's a kinsman who steps up to the plate. It's a relative who brings them into the fold to take care of them. Does this make sense? The difference. The family unit does the laws, the care, all these things. If you were to think about this in one way, the Israel society is all centered around a fancy Hebrew word that is the Bet-Av. Say Bet-Av. That is the father's house. So say Bet-Av. Now father's house. But you have to sing it like Audio Journeys. You go Bet-Av, and then you go Father's house. No, you don't have to do that. But this is it. And it's not like us. It's not a husband, wife, 2.5 kids, a dog, and a 2,000 square foot home, or whatever the averages are now. I don't even know. But here it would be a 15 to 30 people in an extended family. And this extended family would include the patriarch of the group. That's the oldest living male. His wife, his grown sons, their wives, their children. And outside of that, you wind up with something called the clan, and outside of that is the tribe. So this is why we have the 12 tribes. It's the 12 major groupings of the clans that all come together. Because there were actually 12 of them gathered into the nation of Israel. So this is all centered around 3 words we're going to learn today that are going to orient this, and then it's going to help make sense of why the disciples are nervous. Okay? It's this word patra. Say patra. We're going to learn it 3 times. Ready? So say... Sorry, in English it doesn't go right, but say this, patriarchal. Yeah. Now say patrilineal. Now say patrilocal. Okay, because we have patriarchy, patrilineality, and patrilocality. Okay, good. We're going to learn all 3 really quick, and then it'll make sense. Patra, the oldest living male, serves as the core of the society, right? This is how society functions. Okay, we don't have to canonize the Bible culture. We're just going to understand it here. So the first one's patriarchy. This is the idea of authority, and that authority is vested and responsibility is invested to this all of the extended family inside of the oldest living male's household. Ultimately, the oldest living male will decide who lives and sometimes who dies. If someone has to be sold into slavery to make ends meet, or offered up to military service to make sure that something underneath the roof was fed, the patriarch would decide who lives and who dies. It's their job to protect and defend all the kinsmen. So if someone winds up on hard times, they would step up. They would, pull out their metaphorical old-timey checkbook, and they would care for the family. And the immediate family, again, 15 to 30 people underneath it. If a woman winds up outside of the father's household, without a husband, without a son, what's her link to society? There isn't one. They're completely disconnected. With no son or no male that they're married to, they are completely independent of these structures that take care of them. This is why the Bible constantly makes references to caring for widows and orphans, because they're the ones that fall out of the bet of security. This is why the ancient church was very much cared for those who were widowed and orphaned, because they had no connection to these things. So that's patriarchy. Everything follows through the oldest male's decision making. The second one is patrilineality. Say patrilineality. Great. This is that all inheritance goes through men. This is how you track inheritance. This is why the oldest male is so important to decide who gets what, a cut of what. So, they get the biggest chunk, then the next, then the next. But all inheritance is passed through men. This is why most biblical genealogies track the men in the line of the genealogy. The only time you expect to see a woman in it is if the writer has a point to make in this genealogy. So the primary resource is land and children, because all of the resources, all of the gifts, everything passes from male to male. That's patrilineality. And then last one's patrilocality. Patrilocality. Good, we're all alive. This father's household is not just a descriptor of the family, like the father's house. It's a descriptor of the whole compound. And so the people aren't just an extended family, they actually live together in one space. And it's diversified in the way that it does things. They're going to share the products that are grown in this land. The idea, you would have a little house, and on the bottom floor, there would be a little area that animals would be in, and there might be like a stone manger in that bottom first floor, and some areas to store grain. And you would go up to the second floor, and that would be where everything happens. They would have bedrolls, they would have the tables, they would have the kitchen, the fire. Everything happens on the second floor where they hang out, where they do the domestic chores. And if you go to the very top floor, it's open air. So if we were at the top floor, this would be opened up to the very top. In translation of it in Hebrew, it would be called the upper room. For instance, maybe. The location of this little story for John. It's opened up. It's a dry season in Israel. They don't really need a roof on top for an area to live, not a lot of rain. And so this is most likely the setting of the nativity, not necessarily the barn of an inn, but the first floor of a bet of, the first floor of a father's house. And this would be the setting for our group of disciples here on this top floor of somebody's home in the upper room. All these guys are sitting around this table. They're gathered around. They're hearing from Jesus. And at this point, they have made themselves orphans of their father's bet-offs. To orient what these boys have done, they have left their homes to follow this rabbi. They have basically forsaken their inheritance and the things that are due to them and the comfort and care of their father's house to follow this rabbi around. They're essentially orphaned from their protection and connection to society. You with me? So it's not like AJ just like walked around and was like, yo, Mark, hang out with me for a while. And then you guys do that, and if something happened to AJ, Mark, you just go home. That's not how this would work. If Jesus is gone, these guys left it. They don't have an inheritance anymore. They no longer have an authority or connection to a Bet Av. They have left their father's house. This is the language Jesus uses sometimes too of, you must leave your father and mother to join. No one who loves me first you must hate your father and mother. This language that's used, you are leaving this security to follow the rabbi. Does this make sense? We've forsaken all these patra things for these 13 boys, for these 12 boys to be around this rabbi. They've left everything for him, and now he tells them, in this story in John right before this, he says, I'm going to leave. And they're panicked. It's the Last Supper. Jesus, their rabbi, their revolutionary, this son of David, who's supposed to make everything right, tells these boys who have left their home and the security that they had and the apprenticeships they could work into in their family's household, and he tells them, I'm leaving you now. And they fall apart. They say, where are you going? Can we go with you? You can't leave us because we don't have anywhere to go. And this is where Jesus turns to them and tells them in John 14, he says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If it wasn't so, would I have told you where I'm going to prepare a place for you? In a moment of absolute crisis for these men that are up there, Jesus has to come up with something to tell them, anything that could comfort these distraught, fearful disciples. And he tells them, we'll be going to my Father's house. I'll make a place for you. Now, we have imposed Audio Adrenaline's cultural lens on this passage a whole bunch, where we've come up with this, I've got the mansion with a big, big field where we can play football and a big table with lots and lots of food, and a bright land where you never will grow old, and all these images that pop into our head. But I want to break the news to you. This is not the image that Jesus is giving them. You don't have a mansion on the hillside. Sad. Right? I'm sorry about that. Instead, what you have is you have a bedroll inside of the father's Bet Av, in the 4-room pillared home. And what he said is that the eldest son, the firstborn of the household, was gone to seek and save the lost so that you can be reincorporated. That even though you have exiled yourself from the Bet Av on earth, you are under the care, the direction, and comfort of my Father. Does this make more sense? I'm not preparing a mansion for you, but you do not have a home to go back to. And so what I've done as the firstborn of my Father's Bet Av, I have prepared rooms for you under his direction, his authority, his comfort, and his inheritance. You haven't left everything, you've joined onto a new one. Does this make sense? This is the comfort that he gives him, to bring you safely back into my home. So this is going to continue on. Jesus is going to explain how this works now. So you've got 12 very distraught young men who are learning, okay, I don't have a father's house to go back to, but I am a part of your home. And this is how Jesus continues this. How did we get there? What's going on? 5 through 14. Thomas says to him, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? And Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and you have seen him. Philip says, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. And Jesus answered, don't you know me, Philip? His name is spelled differently than mine. Even after I have been among you for such a long time, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How could you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but rather it's the Father living in me who is doing his work. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father, and truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works that I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I go to the Father, and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. So Jesus gives them 3 I am statements here. The first one is, I am the way. Say, I am the way. So first, this is what he tells them. I'm the way. Now, this is not a map or directions, but it's the way itself. He doesn't say, I know the way. Does this make sense? I am the way. Ego ami, the way, right? I am the way, and the way itself. When I worked as a director of middle school camp at Camp Adventure, and even when I was a staff member in college working at Epworth Forest, I actually shockingly really liked to do training. The importance of when you're teaching counselors of like washing your hands so that middle schoolers are like, oh, we wash our hands. Okay, cool. And you eat your vegetables because then the middle schoolers, we pantomime how we do things. What different coded messages mean when they come along the radio like, we got a code brown. Like, we know what that means. That means some kid plugged a toilet somewhere. Like, that's a code brown. But we also know what code red and blue and yellow are, and they're much different. How not to get electrocuted in the old catwalk of the auditorium, that there was one live wire that just hung down randomly for some reason, and if you grabbed it, you got electrocuted. How about one thing that once you guys know that Ashley and I say this all the time, you'll never unhear it, and that's that we were trained to say my pleasure whenever someone asked us for help. We don't, like Chick-fil-A, Like, I don't say you're welcome, and you'll notice it. It's very annoying. But we say my pleasure a lot. And that's all from that. It's a habit I still have. But something I really remember is what I asked counselors to do, and what I've asked staff members to do, and what I remember Gern, my boss at the time, having us do whenever we had retreat groups or campers on site. If someone said, hey, where is this thing? Like, hey, how do I get to McKendree? Or where is paintball? Right? You don't just tell them how to get there, like a camper, like a sixth grader comes up and says, I can't find my cabin. You're not just like, it's right over the hill over there, right? You go, that's so weird. I'm actually heading towards Oxford Cluster right now. And you would walk this kid with you. Does this make sense? Or you would be like, the retreat group sewing ladies would get lost from Fenstermacher, and they'd be like, how do I get back to Fenstermacher? You're like, that's so weird. I'm going to Fenstermacher right now. And you'd walk back that way. This is what I think Jesus meant when he said he's the way. He's not just an instruction to the destination, but he's the person who walks with you to it. It means more than that, but it's not less than that. Like, he shows you the way. He blazes the way. He prepares the way. He provides the way. He is the way. It's the way to meaningful life. It's the way to finding our vocation, our purpose. Jesus doesn't just give us instructions, not just 10 steps to finding our purpose, but he shows us, he accompanies us through the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Come, he says, follow me. I happen to be going that way, and I'll walk with you. But it's even more than that, because he's not just a guide. He himself actually is the actual way itself. Perhaps he's saying that he'll walk with us and show it to us, but if we get tired, he can even carry us the rest of the way, whatever it would take. It's like the scene in Lord of the Rings, which is, honestly, if you've not seen it at this point, I don't know what to tell you. But Frodo and Sam are struggling to finish the last leg of Mount Doom. And Frodo is collapsed. The weight of the ring is just too much. And Sam says to Frodo, he says, Mr. Frodo, I can't carry the ring for you, but I can carry you. And then he picks him up on his shoulders and carries him the rest of the way to the Mount Doom. I think this, too, is what Jesus means when he says he is the way. We're going to get up the mountain doing whatever it takes. Now, it's true that he might let others help us as well. We might be the counselor who helps the sixth grade kid, you know what I mean? We might be the Sam who picks someone up on our shoulders to help them, or we might need to be carried by somebody else. Going back to that camp story, I worked in the auditorium, which means two things. I never got tan, and I never actually went anywhere, right? I never actually was going anywhere. I lived inside a barn for 3 months of the year. But along that way, walking to and from wherever, I may have bumped into a fun engineer who was actually going to the paintball field. And I could tell that person to help this lost person to find the way the rest of the way. This is this image for it. Does this make sense? Sometimes we are walking a journey that's not the way we're going, but we will bump into AJ, who is heading in that way. Jesus. AJ might be Jesus for someone. You've heard this cliche phrase, but this is, I think, what we're getting to. Part of the task of our Christians is to help each other show others the way. We, like Acts tells us, are people of the way. And because we know the way, we know Jesus, we believe in him, we trust him, we follow him, and we know the way. At least we should. And our lives should show that. We should live in a way that people know they could follow us in a way that's worth following. He says he is not just the way, but he's also, I am the truth. Say, I am the truth. Now, okay, so Jesus is the way, and he's the truth. And once again, he doesn't just tell the truth. He doesn't say, I know the truth, right? But I am, Igrami, I am the truth. What does he mean? The truth is a reoccurring theme through a lot of John's gospel. If you go all the way back to the very first chapter, when we're told that the grace and truth comes through Jesus. In John 8, Jesus tells us that we will know the truth and truth will set us free. In John 16, Jesus tells his disciples that when the Holy Spirit comes, the Spirit of truth, he will get us all and guide us to what truth is. And finally, John 18, Jesus tells Pilate that he came to this world to testify to what is true. Everyone, he concludes, who belongs to truth listens to my voice. So Jesus is the truth. He speaks the truth. He guides us to truth. And by his truth, we're set free. This is John's kind of, smushed down message. But what does he mean by all of this? One of the things that he means is that through Jesus, we will learn truth about God. Our universe has a whole bunch to teach us about God if we take our second with our eyes open. The prophets of the Old Testament also have a whole bunch to teach us about it. And just like the universe itself, we can see in the history of God's people glimpses of the truth of the Creator's perfect purpose in this world for us. That we were created in God's image. And our purpose, right, as gardeners of Eden, right, was to care for, to bless, to join the Creator in this sacred task of taking disorder and making it into order. To help bring justice and peace out of chaos and pain. Right? Does this make sense? To make our world look more like the kingdom of heaven, more like what Revelation tells us, more like what we get in Genesis 1 than the world we currently see. We can learn a lot about God from the universe, from the prophets and so many other sources. But if we want a complete truth, there is only one place to look that surpasses all others. And Jesus tells us here it's through understanding him himself. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Suppose, through an analogy, you want to learn about a very famous person. Like it's 4th grade social studies. And you have to do a research project on a president. You with me? Right? So I remember I had to do, it was the 3rd grade, I think, and I had to do, who was it? I can't remember. They became president, they were on a train after the first president died, and their father was actually who swore them in. I don't even know. And I heard their father's the one that swore them in, and my 3rd grade brain said, this guy didn't even want to be president. His dad made him do it. And so my presentation was about how this guy, who was vice president, he didn't even want to be president, because his dad's the one that he was like, I was sworn in by my father, And I was wrong entirely. Because, how hard is it to learn the truth about someone famous when all you can do is read biographies about them or watch old interviews of them? You try to learn all you want about them, but none of it is as close to learning about them as if I could have had a conversation with Calvin Coolidge. I just made it up. I don't even know if that's him. I know that's a president, though. Rutherford B. Hayes, right? And if I could interview Rutherford B. Hayes, I would know more about Rutherford than if I read the biographies. Does this make sense? I could get something. You can get really close to learning all you want to know about him, but if you get the chance to interview, to meet, to spend time, to just see daily life about them, to meet their family, to sit and break bread with someone, you would be learning more about them in that moment than you could reading those biographies. I could read all of AJ's journals, and he doesn't even have any, right? I could talk to his wife, I could do all these things, but until I sat down, I broke bread with AJ, and we loaded up Counter-Strike and, went on terrorist hunting missions together, I wouldn't know a lot about AJ. I get to know him in those moments, the real life moments. Jesus, when you think about it, is the way that we learn the truth about the Creator, because he and the Father are one. And if we can learn about Jesus, if we can spend time, we learn about the divine and the Creator of the universe. And the more we spend time learning and speaking and following Jesus, the more we learn about the God that created the heavens and the earth. He's not just telling us truth, he is the truth that teaches us about the divine. Does this make sense? Last one. He's the way. the truth, and I am the life. Say, I am the life. And again, he's the life. And it's a reoccurring theme through John's gospel. I wish I had time to take us through all 39 verses where John mentions life, but I'll just name a few of them. If you go all the way back to John 1:4, we learn that Jesus, the Word, is the life, and the life was the light of all people. That whoever believes in him, we learn in John 3, has eternal life. And he gives us the water that gushes up of eternal life. The bread of life, which comes down from heaven and gives life to this world. He's the good shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep, who came that way that we may have life and live it abundantly. And near the end of John's gospel, we learn all of this was written so that we may come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through believing, may we have life in his name. Jesus is the life. Believing in him gives us life. Not just life after death, which is how some of us like to think about this, but we get life before death. We get an opening to abundance life. We get an opening into what image bearing, as we were called to be, really means. A life of real human experience that is filled with both peace and joy, but also an understanding of how to work through times when it doesn't have peace and joy. A life filled with love, even in times when it seems impossible. Because without love, as later Johannine communities will tell us, we don't live. And without God's love, there isn't any. God is love, we are told in the letters. And Jesus came to show us what that means. And it is through that love that we find life, now and always. Jesus is life because he gives us life. Jesus is life. Now it's going to continue on. He says, no one comes to the Father except through me. He says, I'm the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So what about this little last bit of this little I am statement? We get these three things, and no one goes to him except through him. When he says these words, he speaks them in the upper room to his disciples, not to the crowds, not to religious leaders, not to Pilate, not to the soldiers that will arrest him, but he speaks these words to his disciples. No one comes to the Father except through me. And I think an understanding of those words is tied up in exactly who and when he speaks them. Who he speaks them to and when he speaks them. They are not meant as a threat. So many times we weaponize the gospel. Hey, if you don't know Jesus, guess where you're going? You with me? This is not a threat or a stare to non-believers. This is, to me, a complete misuse of the intent of the gospel and of this little section, particularly in John. Jesus speaks these words to those who do believe. They're not a threat. They're a promise. We come to the Father through Jesus. He is the way, the truth, and the life. The only way that matters, the only truth that endures, and the only life that lasts. Jesus is the one who can teach and trust to bring the Father's house, to give us into that Bedav, the security of what this tribal culture promises. He's the one that we can trust to teach us the truth about the love for us because he is truth. He can get us to the Father's house because he's the way, and he's the one we can trust to give us life filled with hope and peace because he is that life. No one, you might say, who believes in Jesus comes to the Father except through Jesus. We don't have to actually turn to anywhere else. John's question would be, why should you? Or would you? We turn to Jesus always. And when in doubt, you follow Jesus. When you're lost, you follow. When we don't know who to believe, we trust. And when we struggle to find the purpose in life, we find it in Jesus. I am the way, the truth, and the life, now and always. Thanks be to God. Let's pray.